Fighting games have always had a perceived onboarding problem. Between things like actually playing the characters, how the game accepts inputs, the concept of motion inputs altogether, powerful comeback mechanics, and many others, since Street Fighter 4, developers have attempted many ways to make the onboarding process to a fighting game easier for brand new players. Now, long-time players, especially when new games drop, will usually call this like dumbed down or whatever, but over time and with the addition of new characters and updates and mechanics, these games eventually become beloved members of the fighting game genre. And those same players that people kind of called scrubby and were ruining the game come out as battle-hardened veterans. And to me, the funny thing is, despite how hard it could be to just start up let's say 1v1 game like Street Fighter or Tekken, tag fighters have it even rougher. Because a player has to not only deal with all the things about learning a fighting game in general, but then they have to do it with multiple characters. When you play a tag fighter or a versus fighter or whatever you want to call it, you duke it out in a 2v2 format or a 3v3 format. And because of this, there's additional friction to actually getting into the game. So for starters, as a simple example, you don't just pick a character. So for a 1v1 fighter, when people don't know how to just get started, the common advice is, hey, just pick a character you think is cool and then go from there. But if you play a 3v3 fighter, you might think one character is cool, but you can't actually play the game yet because you have to play another 2 characters with them. This is because the way a match goes, you have a character out and they have the ability to call other characters to do a specific attack on screen called assists. Now, a typical fighting game player watching this video right now might be like, oh, okay, so the typical pain point or friction or whatever for someone new is planning what assist you have on your team after you pick a character that you're interested in. But I'd go as far as saying that the big problem is you have to pick an assist in the first place. Rules of 3 were big here. Marvel 2 and Marvel 3 both had 3 assists to select, but Dragon Ball FighterZ actually launched without the ability to select an assist for characters. It sounds regressive to some, but I think this was a good idea actually on launch. Just picking other characters is hard enough, and then on top of that, you're going to give the player another choice of what attack that character is going to do. For a brand new fighting game, probably not necessary, and again, a decent idea. The only problem ended up being that this ended up heavily limiting team composition. As players developed the game, they discovered that certain types of assists were really important and only certain characters had them. And because each character didn't have multiple assists, there were not other characters that had similar options. So the game quickly became centralized around a couple of assists. And later in Season 3, the developers would add the ability to pick 2 more assists by character a la Marvel. Doing this at Season 3 was also good too, because by then new players would have grown with the game and the concept of picking multiple assists would not have been so crazy to them. But the other extreme from not being able to pick your assist is being able to pick literally any assist. Take something like Skullgirls for example. That game you can even input whatever command that you want as an assist. This really opens up creativity, which team game veterans really value, but it makes it really hard for a new player to pick an assist. Now, if I recall correctly, when the game came out, because I did play launch Skullgirls, probably 2012 Skullgirls, I want to say the game had suggested assists for you. But now the game is more than 10 years old, and so community resources really help here, but I still think it's a problem from a new player's perspective. In a way, the idea of active tag kind of opens this up and at the same time makes it easier. Kind of like trying to do what Skullgirls does, but easier. The concept is you can tag in a character and you can specifically do this while the character on screen is doing something for varied results. This is good and pretty intuitive, but also incredibly powerful, and usually these games are some of the most unforgiving games in the fighting game genre. Powerful approaches from long distance into strong mix-ups, powerful reversal options into strong mix-ups, you get the idea. Now this thing about characters comes before all the other difficult things that comes with learning and getting good at any fighting game. The speed, the powerful offense, the long combos, the execution. These additional things I just listed are like mountaintops you can't see beyond the clouds. Because just the fact that you have to learn multiple characters and like the basics at the same time is already a daunting enough task. But I think about it, even games like KOF have this issue, and like in my personal experience too, I had KOF 13, and definitely one of the things that kind of bothered me about it was that I liked a couple of characters, like I liked Elizabeth in KOF 13, but you had to make like a team, and that game is not even a tag fighter. You just play 3 characters. But I mean, hey, for real, if we're gonna talk about why I didn't play, is because the netcode was bad. Anyway, now right now, I think anyone who's really in this genre of fighting games would say we are in a new era, a tag fighter era. Hunter x Hunter Net Impact came out in July, 2XKO is now in early access, and Invisible Versus and Marvel Tokon are supposed to come out next year in 2026. And I think that specifically, Riot's 2XKO and Arc System Works Marvel Tokon both recognize that this is a problem. But the interesting thing to me is that both games have really different approaches to tackling this idea of how do we deal with people struggling to learn multiple characters. And you definitely want to stick around to the end, because while I think 2XKO does this in a very interesting and honestly really smart way, Marvel Tokon has really new ways of doing so, at least from my experience playing fighting games. Now, 2XKO is like a fighting game player's fighting game. It is quite a difficult game, and it gives you both a lot of options, but it also lets you maul your opponent. Despite the complexity, the game offers a variety of ways to onboard new players who might be intimidated by learning multiple characters. So for starters, there's duos. Smash Bros aside, at least in my experience, I haven't seen a fighting game do a team sort of thing with 2 players versus 2 players since the well-received Street Fighter Cross Tekken. I guess. Let me know how you feel about Street Fighter Cross Tekken in the comments. I remember people not liking the game very much, but hey. Now the thing about duos is that it greatly eases the burden of actually getting into the game. For starters, you don't have to control 2 characters at once, the problem we've been talking about basically the whole video. But you could also use duos to strategically make things that are normally executionally demanding much simpler. So essentially, when you tag, when a move or special move that has a follow-up is active, once you tag, you can still keep doing that move. So for example, I have lovely Timo, one of my new buddies in this game, and he has this dart, which is 5L, standing L. And you can do multiple, 1, 2, 3. So if Yasuo is on the screen, and I do 1, 2, or 1, 2, 3, what I can do is have Yasuo on screen, 1 tag, and then keep firing. So you saw Yasuo doing a jab twice because I'm firing with Timo. Now, this is strong, but definitely clunky, and can take a bit of focus and muscle memory for a solo player to execute. The example I use here involves the L button. You notice I'm mashing L with Yasuo too. This shows you that as a solo player, it's not easy to get only Timo to do the jabs. You'd have to do something to cover or mask the input somehow. A more complex example of this would be with Yasuo and Jinx, where Jinx shoots the minigun, and when you tag into Yasuo, you hold the S1 button so that you can continue firing the minigun, but also Yasuo's stance is on down S1, so you have to hold down S1 to make her keep firing, and then hop, and you do all these things with the solo character. It takes a while to learn how to do and get like really tight and threatening, and you don't actually see people go for this in matches that much when they do use a team. Now in a duo, not only does this become far easier to control, but it also adds an element of engagement for the other player, as they can still control the character even when they are not running around on the screen. And I personally really love it when fighting games let you do stuff that's like not fighting. I know it sounds like a very odd thing, but I think of this as an example as one. It's like you have the attack happening and then you tag, but the person in the back can still cover the person in the front. It feels like you're working together. I also really like mechanics like Melty Bloods, reduce damage, for example. So you're getting hit, but you don't have to just watch the combo happen. You can press buttons and then reduce the damage. Pretty cool. So I really like this dynamic for duos, for real. Funny enough, Sidekick also has mass reduced damage, and fuses are another way that 2XKO helps players who might be intimidated by playing multiple characters. So in 2XKO, when you pick your team, the game asks you to pick a fuse, and you have 5 different options. You have 2x assist, double down, freestyle, sidekick, and juggernaut. These have enough of an impact on how you play characters that I jokingly call the fuse your third character. Now the main 3 you see in competitive play are 2x assist, double down, and freestyle. 2x assist is, well, that. You can call an assist twice. Where double down is kind of like the traditional tag fighter mechanic. So with this, you can do super into another super. But also, if you have an assist on screen and you super, you can actually tag into the other character, which is quite strong. Now, freestyle is simple in concept, but tactical in practice, where you have the ability to tag twice. Double down is pretty much recommended because it has some genre familiarity, as I mentioned before. Many tag fighters let you do supers into supers, and also because of the ability, the damage output is high, so it seems the easiest to use. Freestyle, on the other hand, is probably the hardest to use, as sequencing around the ability to tag twice can be somewhat difficult to execute. Now, the game has 2 more fuses for you to pick, but they are specifically focused around someone playing one character. Juggernaut lets you literally play alone, and you do more damage, you have access to more HP, and you have access to a unique attack that forcibly switches out an opponent's character. And then Sidekick, which I have experience playing as, also lets you play alone, but you have an assistant available. You just don't have to play as them. You have a slew of unique mechanics as well, such as massively reduced damage, as I mentioned before. You have access to the super assist, last stand from the beginning. Some unique super into super options because you don't have an assist, and more. Now, both of these kind of bring you in the game a different way. So Juggernaut is legit, you just want to play one character, you don't really want to interact with the tab mechanics. And Sidekick is a great way to try a team out without learning both characters, just trying one character and their assist out to kind of just ease your way in. Now, both these fuses also have additional merits, like the ability to switch characters out forcibly and all the unique things that Sidekick has. But in the end, the ability to active tag is so good, you don't really see competitive players use either of them. And these are all great ideas in my opinion. They're clearly thought out, and I think it even leans really hard into like, this is a fighting game made by fighting game players, as these are ideas that are pieced together from other fighting games that make a lot of sense with the kind of, at least from my knowledge of League, 'cause I don't really play League, like the team support type of game that League of Legends is supposed to be. Duos, like I mentioned, is Street Fighter Cross Tekken. I mean, really, you could go further and be like, it's from Smash. Smash has 2v2 and all sorts of things involving teams. But, you know, we don't gotta talk about Smash and have that argument today. And many fighting games have fuses. Capcom vs SNK 2 has grooves. Multi-Blood Actress Again, one of my favorite games, has moons, where you have crescent, full, and half moon, which do different stuff and changes the characters. And the fuses make characters play differently enough that it helps 2XKO mitigate the small roster in the short term, along with helping with this onboarding thing. Now, I hyped this up earlier, but Marvel Tokon goes about this a way different way than 2XKO while addressing the same problem. Now, the game looks overwhelming as it was announced to be a 4 vs 4 fighter, which, at least for the competitive fighting game genre, as far as I know, has not been done ever. But it also does plenty of things to ease new people into the game. For starters, the characters have a shared life bar, so you can quite literally just play one character the whole time with assists. This introduced the concept of calling assists to the player, but without the stress of having to learn multiple characters. There's also potential depth here with how the game is played in the long term. Is the team built around one character specifically, or is the team flexible, allowing the player to switch characters in and out depending on what they are going up against? We don't actually know what the game will lean towards yet, but the option is there, at least. Another thing that Tokon does is in regards to the assists themselves. So when you pick your team on the character select screen, each character is assigned to a slot, a neutral shooting assist, an anti-air vertical assist, and a unique assault assist. A neutral assist would be something like a character shooting a beam or projectile at you, while anti-air assist would look something like a dragon punch. The unique one could vary. So for example, on Doctor Doom, it is a massive laser that comes down from above with some light tracking. So one angle is, no matter how many characters the game ends up having, the character in their respective slot would always do something that the player would know after seeing it like one time. As in, once you know that the shooting assist shoots somebody, it doesn't matter if it's Ghost Rider or Captain Marvel or Storm, you know that when you put them in that slot, that's what they do. They just have their own like small little twist to that thing. But then there's also a more general universal assist. So this might sound weird. So I mentioned before that when you pick your team, you have like your point character, and then you have your shooting, vertical, and assault assist, and like you just put the characters there and they do that. But also, while you're playing, there are certain situations where characters do an all-round type of assist for the situation that seems to be universal across the cast. Let me explain. So when developers in these games make an assist, right, an assist attack, they set values for things like how the move works on hit, how the move works on block, how fast it is, does it have any special properties, just like any other move. While I can't speak for games like Marvel 2 or Marvel 3 because I didn't compete in them, I did take Dragon Ball FighterZ very seriously, and this thing was felt really heavily in that game because many assists had to be buffed over the game's lifespan in one of these 4 ways to convince people to be willing to pick the character. The problem was that in the past, a lot of the assists were just not enough. Like, it was too hard to hit confirm a certain assist, or another assist was good on hit but it was really bad on block, or another assist was too easy to hit by accident. So learning from the past, what Arc System Works decided to do in Tokon is that in certain situations, when you call an assist, there is a special kind of universal assist that the character will do. It seems that characters have a special assist for block stun situations and hit stun situations, as well as when you are in the air in neutral. The block stun hit stun thing is so that you don't have to worry about an assist not quite having enough block stun to do something, or not quite having enough hit stun in order for you to combo. And then on top of that, again, remember, since you have 3 assists, if for some reason you're new and you like fat finger, you're getting overwhelmed by like which one you're supposed to do, and especially too because even though you don't have to do this, you can play one character, there could be the case that like you just change the order for whatever reason in game. You're never going to have a thing where you hit somebody and you call the wrong assist by accident, because there's a universal one. Now, Marvel Tokon had a closed beta in September, and I heard a little bit of grumbling about this, but because not many people were able to play, it wasn't like an open beta or something, I don't think people talked about it this much. But this is a pretty, like, it's a new idea. It's kind of like a, I don't want to say it's like brave, like, oh my god, Arxis, you're so brave, I've never seen somebody like homogenize something to solve a problem in a fighting game, right? But what I will say is they really do have unique ways of approaching some onboarding problems over the years. Like, for example, we have a bunch of fighting games that have auto combos today, or pulse attacks if you talk about 2x KO. But at least in my experience, Persona 4 Arena was the first game that had that as a mechanic, and it was a huge deal when they announced it. People were like, why would you just take combos out of the game? We would discover later that and this is kind of common with mechanics like this, it's like, yeah, there's that, but there's also like a strategic element to it, and like different characters use different ways and all that. But when you're reading an article and the dev is talking about how, like, yeah, if you never played, you can just press one button, you can do a combo, you're like, dude, what? So I sort of feel the same about this, and I don't even have a way to describe it. I've just been calling it the universal assist because I don't have another way of describing it. I don't know if it has an official name. And again, I find this topic just so interesting because it's interesting to see how fighting game developers have changed their thinking around onboarding people in their fighting games. And I think 2X KO and Marvel Tokon, they both kind of saw this thing as being a major thing for tag fighters, and they have really different ways of attacking the problem. I think that's pretty cool, because unlike the, oh, the combos are hard, or oh, I can't do motion inputs, this thing of like, oh, you gotta play multiple characters is actually not just a new player thing. This is a thing at like all skill level. I mentioned myself earlier with KOF 13, but even when I started DBFZ, I kind of was like gritting my teeth. I was like, I gotta learn 3 characters, but I was like, I have to play this game, so it's like, you gotta do what you gotta do at this point. And even then, that game did have a method for that. It was a little subtle, but after playing the game for a while, I was like, oh, this is one of those games where it's like, if you learn like one character, you can at least pick up, not be good with, but pick up about like 70% of the cast. As especially on launch, the majority of the cast is just similar to SSJ Vegeta or SSJ Goku. Coincidentally, 2 of the most popular characters in Dragon Ball. But yeah, let me know what you think. Like I mentioned, I think this is cool. I don't know what to say. Honestly, people be calling me a shill because I like trying new fighting games, but outside of trying new fighting games and playing with new groups of people, I just like seeing how we refine this genre, because it's changed quite a bit since I started competing way back in Melty Blood at Cadenza. You know, like a pretty old fighting game at this point. As usual, if you have any questions or comments, definitely feel free to leave in the comment section below. I do have a Patreon. If you want to support me and the channel, you can go to patreon.com/LordKnight. I've been trying to slowly do things a little bit differently there, and there's a lot of free content too. So even if you don't want to support financially, you can just go check it out and just see stuff that I feel like I can't make into videos. Basically, like miscellaneous tips or concepts that I don't know how to make into videos, I do over there. If you're interested in coaching for Guilty Gear and 2X, I'm going to start 2X coaching pretty soon. It will be at metafy.gg/LordKnight. I stream basically most days on, especially weekdays, twitch.tv/LordKnight. And we got the second channel, LordKnight Chronicles, which we're working on. Like and subscribe if you guys feel like it. And I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.